This is the Minding Your Own Business podcast, brought to you by Elder Research. Each episode will bring in data and analytics gurus from around the world as they regale us with their data analytics stories and enlighten us with their secrets for how to turn data into actionable insights. Now, here's our host, Evan Wimpy, who will guide us as we dare to mind our own business.
Hello and welcome to the Minding Your Own Business podcast. I'm your host, Evan Wimpy, and today I'm excited to introduce a double feature. We have two guests today, both from the Home Depot, where they work in analytics. So Jon Weininger is a Met Analytics Data Science Manager, and John Carroll is a Senior Manager for Met Analytics and Technology. So they're both Johns. They're both from the Home Depot. For some disambiguation, I'll refer to Jon Weininger as JW throughout this show. And I hate to go on a rant at the beginning of an episode already, but I think data provenance and disambiguation, sort of entity resolution, is a problem that's easy to overlook until it becomes a problem, and then it's a real challenge. So I don't know if this is best practice, but at least for this show, it'll be John and JW. So after that opening rant, JW, maybe you can take just a minute to introduce yourself and your role there at Home Depot.
Yeah, you bet. So I'm JW. I'm a manager of the relatively newly formed Met Data Science team, where we just celebrated our 1-year birthday about 2 weeks ago. And in total, in my evolving career at Home Depot, I've worked in 3 different groups: 2 years in store operations, 2 years in supply chain analytics, and now 2.5 years in Met. First in an analytics manager role, and then as we continued some of the momentum of the cool projects that the team had been working on, and then some of the things that I got to be a part of and maybe help to guide and introduce, where our leadership had the creative idea of how can we keep this thing going? Might it make sense to try out a data science team and see if that can provide value to the business? And we're 1 year and 2 weeks into the experiment and have some cool stuff that we've completed and some cool stuff we're working on and even cooler stuff we're planning.
Awesome. Thanks, JW. John?
Definitely agree with JW. We've got a lot of cool stuff we're working on today. So my name is Jon Carroll. I've been with Home Depot for a little over 10 years. And I didn't really have a huge bent towards analytics when I first started, but the business needs demanded that I get some skill sets in that area. So I did forecasting for all of the hourly payroll in Home Depot for about 7 years, and then when I moved over to the MET team, which stands for Merchandising Execution Team, I got to kind of cut my teeth on what I'd say an analytics transformation. So imagine, I like to call it Ultron, but it was basically our SQL server that it had all these different nodes, and there was just no rhyme or reason the way it was organized. And so about 3,000 different things that were just kind of a tangled mess. And that was a huge issue for the organization at the time. And so that's what I got to come in and cut my teeth on. And once we fixed it, it opened up all these doors for teams like JW and his team to come in and have some really huge impacts for the organization. So I am not a trained data scientist, but I certainly recognize their value. It's been a great ride the last 3.5 years that I've been in this part of the organization, to see the transformation up the analytics maturity curve. If you all have discussed those before, it's a real thing, and it takes a lot of time.
Yeah, certainly. You speak to that curve. We've talked about that, and we've got folks listening that are at any point on that curve. We hope. You mentioned that this team is about 1 year old. It's certainly not the only analytics team at the Home Depot. Can you talk about sort of how your team fits in with other analytics teams? Is there an enterprise-wide, or does the Met sort of stay siloed within merchandising? And I'm not sure who's best equipped to put that puzzle piece together.
I'll say one piece is that we are consumers of data, right? So Home Depot does have a central team that manages the data collection and dissemination, but that's for those commonly used there's commonly used data sets, right? So then you got these other teams that are creating data and insights, and so we have a healthy mix between data that we've created and then also data that's supported by the enterprise. So yeah, like Home Depot's big, and we probably, I mean, from a pure analytics team standpoint, I mean, JW, I don't know, we probably have at least 1,000 dedicated like data analyst types spread across the different like hundreds of different parts of our org.
Yeah, Evan, one small clarification is although the data science team is 1 year old, in our Met Analytics and Insights group, which has analytics and data science as distinct teams, the analytics capability has been evolving for years. And I think even formally we used to call it more of like the reporting team or the BA team. And I've worked on reporting teams in the past, and that that distinction is important, right? So in the way we simplify the complicated world around us maybe is like reporting is displaying information, right? We want to keep score and show what happened. Analytics, hopefully, we're starting to begin to look for outliers or draw attention to specific exceptions that are hopefully associated with actions and ideally followed up with some kind of ongoing measurement of, we found this thing that's wrong, we showed it to you, did you do something, how do we know if it worked? So I think kind of completing the puzzle, and then data science is going to be a little bit more involved in either predicting or looking backwards in a more sophisticated way, like some causal inference that problems we've worked on. And then if you look backwards and you can't find what you're looking for, maybe you have to have some input in helping to shape or design an experiment to be able to isolate some specific thing that you're curious about. So I think that's how our team has evolved. And then just to go on a brief sidetrack here, it's just like, if you're in an analytics group and you're interested in dabbling in some data science themed work, but feel intimidated by it, we all feel that way. And then even some of the people I look up to and admire a lot in Home Depot, one of them was just Pat Wuong was on a podcast talking about still kind of having that little bit of imposter syndrome. And I was like, one of the top 3 people I look up to the most in data science still sometimes feels that and felt that as he was kind of growing and making stuff happen in Home Depot. It's like, that's very encouraging. But so that was kind of my attempt to connect the dots between reporting, analytics, and data science, and then give people some kind of peace of mind of it's okay to feel like I'm figuring it out as we go, like everybody is in every role in every team.
Yeah, I think that's good. And for the individual contributors with a lot of experience out there, don't hesitate to convey that. That really helps everybody when you can convey some of the things that you question. And I think organizationally as well, we're trying to do these things, but we don't know if we're structured or organized the right way. So it's useful to hear you talk about the way you sort of split the team. There's you've got descriptive things that you do, you've got predictive things, and then hopefully prescriptive things that you can do to institute some change. So John mentioned earlier that background is not specifically in data science or analytics. JW managing that team, I presumably there's some things that you need to convey that are very technical to John and then to other folks as well, but maybe you can just discuss the dynamic between the two of you and how you sort of try to convey the analytics language that you guys are working in.
Yeah, I'll attempt to take on a portion of that, and then curious of how John thinks about it as well. I would say that each of us has a substantial background in SQL, right? So even the first department we worked in, where we first knew each other 8 or 10 years ago, lots of just in-depth, complex SQL, lots of common table expressions, lots of different sources, some of them well documented, some of them not, right? So I think my steps were getting really, really strong in SQL gave me an opportunity to also learn the different business applications, right? So you look at the front end, and then I try to figure out the SQL in the back end database and try to make it match the screen that I'm looking at, where I maybe search for a specific order or a specific customer or something like that. So I would say SQL was the first stepping stone, and then someone I admire a lot, Darrell Hicks, who can't overlook the opportunity to give him a shout out here. Like a DBA, very logical thinker, incredible problem solver, one of the most creative, talented people I've ever encountered. He really helped me set that foundation of to think logically through the problem, and then SQL can force you to do that. And it's almost like, unlike Python, where there are 1,000 different ways to do almost everything, SQL only has a very, very limited or like light footprint of things you can do, but you can still combine those elements to build like almost unlimited things. So that was kind of my start down the analytics path. And then of course you do the basic visualization tools. However, like statistics was always one of my favorite topics, in the same way my undergrads in economics. So economic thinking is like an approach to thinking. Statistics is an approach to like generalizing, or like based on a limited sample. So it's like those building blocks of being strong in math, strong in SQL, and then doing some kind of like doing forecasting, time series forecasting for a while, mostly statistical, like exponential smoothing and ARIMA. Those elements all build together so that I think I can basically figure out which data science problem solving approach applies, or which view we might consider, and when it doesn't apply. And I think I bring a lot of value to the team in finding interesting, valuable things for them to work on without like blitzing them with, I'm going to look through every inch of what you wrote in Python. I'm not. I'm just going to ask, what's your baseline? How much better do you think you can do? How long do you think it can take? And like go talk to other people who have looked at similar problems and get creative and get some ideas.
Great. John, do you have a different perspective?
I would say so. Yeah, I said I don't have a background in data science. JW alluded to I have a lot, a lot in SQL. So when we're talking I do understand enough to know what's happening, and when I have to dig into the details, I can usually understand about 90% of it. But my role has, as JW has picked up the torch this last year, my role has kind of started to get out of the weeds and get into the more strategic and really just trying to support, the good work that they're doing, making sure the roadblocks are gone, and then, of course, making sure that our leadership understands the value of what our data science teams are working on. And it doesn't mean that, I'm not saying that they don't value it, but sometimes they don't understand the time it takes to validate a finding. I won't name names, but I've seen, where people look at two data points and then they assume there's a correlation, and that's not how you do that. And so it's no, that takes some time, and this is how we're doing it. And you're still going to get the same answer, but understand when you get it from us, we have the statistical rigor behind those answers that give us confidence in the decision you're about to make off of it. So that's kind of where I'm where I sit. I will take, and JW is a great communicator, but we'll say we have slightly different audiences based on our roles, and so I have to communicate a little bit differently than he does, and especially up the chain when we have people making some fairly sizable and sometimes paradigm shifting decisions. Yeah,
that's certainly a very fair point, and I think that's a great way to try to convey things. 2 points, I can draw a line, and I can extrapolate however far I want from that. It's a dangerous thing, but it's all too easy to do. And then JW, you mentioned starting from a baseline, what is the baseline for which we try to improve? I think that's so often an overlooked question, that we just think we can throw a model at this and build something good. What do we expect to improve on the baseline is great. So John, you mentioned something in that answer. You try to remove the roadblocks for JW. And so open-ended, I'm happy to, if you want to talk about any of those, what those roadblocks may be, but I'm going to do some forecasting of my own. Typically, data scientists like to complain about not being able to get good, clean data quickly and easily. So I don't know if that is a common roadblock, or if there's anything else that you'd like to touch on there that.
Yeah, that's one of them, right? Like, let's talk about data engineers. And if I had to say, when JW first, started like basically a year ago and 2 weeks, as a data science manager and started hiring people up, I don't think that we had in mind that we wanted a data engineer specifically. We knew it was a function that was going to need to be, considered, but we quickly found that, one of the impediments to getting a model out there was the data engineering, and even some of our former team members, spent a lot of time on data engineering, and got, I don't. I am mostly data engineering, like when it comes to the mindset, but like I look forward to that end result more than I look forward to like diving in and trying to like do all the things, all the SQL scripting and whatnot. So it becomes a burden, after a while, and can affect satisfaction. Unless you find an individual who that's what they want to do. And so, of course, when we started hiring, we weren't telling people, data engineering is going to be 50% of your job, right? Like you have to spend 2 months fixing this data before you can pump it through your Python model. So we did identify that and like had some fun conversations around like, how are we going to make that happen? In the meantime, it was like, I'm sorry, data scientists, like this is going to be something that you have to learn and get good at. Now I will say, I think everyone, whether you're doing reporting or, building those like insights tools, or you're a data scientist supporting like a very large volume of stakeholders, I think you have to have some data engineering, I won't call it expertise, but experience. Like you've got to have a mindset that can scale whatever it is whatever it is you're doing there. But to have a dedicated individual who can float around to the different projects and optimize this or set this up so that when the data scientist moves on to the next project, there's that data set ready and waiting. Like that's definitely a thing that we desire. And I would say like we're starting to make inroads too. So we have like gotten a contractor to kind of help with that. And so like, I know I went really far down deep in that hole, but I know that's like one of the questions. I think you were kind of pushing us towards that. So there's my answer to the data engineer question. But the other stuff is, we have a team structure where like a lot of the initiatives, I would say 90% of the initiatives of our organization, just the merchandising execution team organization, about 90% of the initiatives that they're pursuing at some point flow through my team. And so like we don't have a lot of spare time. And so, but then we also have all these other stakeholders with these great ideas, and it's just going to be so easy and wonderful if we can give you a week or two of time to go and address this. So one of my things is to make sure that our stakeholders are focused on the goal, and that if they want some of our time, they've got to help us consider what gets deprioritized. It's not a do all the stuff that we were planning to do and then this other thing. Like we're full of work. We're probably at about 110% capacity right now, just being candid, and we're managing that, I would say, pretty well. But man, it's like we get a lot of great ideas from our stakeholders, and they're usually right about the opportunity that's there. It's just how do we assess that value, and that's again kind of where I'll come in to do a lot of blocking and tackling. I know JW probably isolates me from a little of that as well, And there's probably a pet project or two that comes up every now and then that they've identified, and then they'll bring to me, and it has this huge value. And we do deprioritize something, but a lot of that happens where I'm just talking with our stakeholders and saying, hey, this team is for like those strategic long-term initiatives. And I know you want us to pull some data for you, but that's not what they're here for you to do. That's not what they're here to do.
Sure.
So, I had to have a lot of those conversations last year when JW switched roles. With the results they're getting, they're seeing the value and kind of aligning their requests to what they're working on, which makes it a lot easier to say yes to some of those things.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. When you're successful and you deliver a lot of value, people want more value. They have more requests, and nothing draws a crowd like a crowd. People are asking for analytic support. More people want analytic support. JW, do you want to comment, or do you want to just maybe from your perspective what it's like to trying to prioritize the things that come into the team?
Yeah, a couple comments on prioritization. There, you have the traditional effort and impact, right? You might make your 4-boxer. That's a pretty standard concept in business settings, so probably with good reason. And I'm sure that other people are more sophisticated in approaches. Something else I like to think about is, and I've started calling it sort of like market timing. So it's like organizational interest and kind of the likelihood of getting a strong adoption from somebody who can help to really focus attention and resources. So I won't get into the super specifics of it, but there something could be moderate effort and high impact, but the organizational timing, maybe the interest isn't there, or maybe they tried something similar some X number of quarters ago where there's or maybe they actually have something really good and we think maybe we have an incredible version of it. Well, let's let the really good version ride and continue to make an impact, and then come in and say, oh, look, you exceeded your goals by this amount. We think we could help you exceed them even by a little bit more. So the other aspect of something I would say very much I'm on the learning curve around, when you have more interesting ideas than you have team capacity, you can either get really, really good at rapidly triaging. Triage is our sort of phrase. I'm sure it's just for kind of initially attempting to size the prize, maybe with some napkin math or cutting some reasonable corners and understanding the assumptions and potential downsides of doing that, right? So if I can get faster at approximating the size of the prize, it makes it possible for me to consider more things before I pick those 2 or 3 things to be really, really good at. So currently, as someone who likes to go wide and in depth where I can, this I think helps me satisfy my curiosity going wide, but then helps me to narrow the focus, which is makes it more enjoyable to be on a team. Okay, I only have our director Mike focuses challenges me to focus let's aim at 1 or 2 things at a time, maybe per quarter or per half, and those refocusing conversations, some of them have only been 3 to 5 minutes. And they have dramatically impacted the trajectory of our work. And I think they've helped us to build very powerful Legos one on top of each other when maybe I tried to, build 4 or 5 ones too wide when we didn't need to. So I appreciate that. And I think that, the senior leaders who have gotten really good at that really empowered their teams and give us that peace of mind and confidence to go after the right things. The other thing is having the humility to know, sometimes we don't. And then it's what are our feedback loops so that we can pivot.
Yeah, that I think that will resonate with a lot of folks who are trying to juggle priorities and who maybe don't have the leadership that says, yes, reprioritize with this new initiative, but just add it to the backlog and do everything. So I think those are really useful thoughts. I want to ask one more question, and I'll ask the same question to each of you. You talked about some of the MET's initiatives that come in and how you prioritize. Let's just scrap all that, and it's the Jon or JW show, and you get to set your own initiatives, and everybody has full buy-in. And yes, the interesting problem that you want to tackle is the problem that everybody wants to be tackled, and you can put all your resources towards. So what is that problem for you? Where do you want to point the analytic efforts?
So, when we hear about problems, and I think I mentioned this before, like, we have a lot of people who work in the stores, and a lot of our most successful projects have been born from problems that our field brings to our attention. And like there's a lot of smart people out there who haven't been as blessed as me to be in this role, or as blessed as JW to be in his role. But they have a lot of great ideas, and so we have no shortage of ideas from those individuals, and then it's just like how can we bounce these off of other stakeholders and try to arrive at the couple that are going to drive the most value. One of the questions we get a lot from our field is, what's the value of what I'm doing? And that's something we've been perpetually interested in doing, and I would say probably a little more than dabbled in it and come up with some great answers. But it's not enough just to say what you've done. I think there's this notion of like, how can we expound on that? Once you get that kind of description of the impact, how then can you start predicting and prescribing, right? Like how can we get more of that impact, or how can we maximize that impact? And so I think with information, I find that the devil's in the details. So anything we can do that will get that impact to a more granular level, and not just like it's the impact from a like sales perspective, from a like sometimes it's an experience perspective, which is a little bit harder to measure, and then obviously like the savings. So it's very simple business concepts at a high level, like basically taking that balance sheet that we report out on like every quarter and just drilling it down to like as far down as we can go, using that using that concept is I think has a lot of opportunity in it.
Yeah, very exciting. Yeah, thank you, John. And JW, I'll pose the same question to you.
I'm going to potentially give what will seem like a cliche answer, but is not. It is heartfelt, and I've thought about this a little bit. Of the vision and strategy stuff is fascinating to me, and like Simon Sinek's book of Start With Why and also The Infinite Game are extremely informative. So everyone who's listening, know your why, and make sure read about what a just cause is. Even if you only watch the 3 to 5 minute YouTube video, consider that as you think about how you approach your work and everything else, and how it all fits together. So the cliche part is, it's going to seem a little snarky, but I'm very bought into the vision and mission of what Met is doing. So when you're asking me if I could set the priority, I would probably just have the priority that our leadership has set for our organization. So that's convenient for me, and it's motivating, and even when things go well and when things don't. So I hate to give such a cliche answer, but it's, if I could set the priority, I would continue to do what we're doing because it makes a lot of sense and it seems to be working. And then I would also just want to emphasize that some of the people who started Home Depot say a phrase that I think about often but don't say out loud as often as I would like, which is, when we take care of our associates, they'll take care of the customers, and everything else takes care of itself. So I think I would challenge John, Carroll, and myself and our team and everyone in our immediate organization and everyone on every floor in this building, as you're for the projects that you're working on, are you looking at it through that lens multiple times throughout the project? And if you're building an app, are you looking at it throughout the whole life cycle of an app? If you're making an enhancement, if you're changing a process, is that always top of mind, and you're working backwards from that result? And then, just to get an emphasized commercial, do you have measurements in place to help you approximate how much you are taking care of the associates? Do you have feedback loops? Would they agree? If one of them just jumped on, if we went to a random store and asked a random person, here's what we're working on, do you see how this connects to making your work more fulfilling? Do they see that connection?
Wow. Yeah, that's great. It doesn't seem too cliche at all. It seems very sincere, and it seems really well aligned with, John, the answer that you mentioned, you've got the associates and the things that are going to empower them. So I think that's great. I think those are two really encouraging answers. And are you guys actively hiring right now? I don't want to encourage people to apply if you're not actively hiring.
Our specific teams are not actively hiring. However, the broader data science community within Home Depot has a few roles open. And if you go in Google and just type in, I think it's, John will know, and I'm embarrassed to slightly go blank on this, but I think it's called Career Depot, or just type in Home Depot jobs, or just type in data science.
Sure.
You will find it. And then sometimes there's a critique that the descriptions are generic. That might occasionally be true, but that is usually not true. The descriptions are relatively specific to the roles. I know we get to give extensive input when we post new jobs. So there are likely roles open in Home Depot. Yeah, and if any of this resonates and you want to explore further, I will, like, the people who don't know it yet, you can be bold and ask. The worst thing that you'll hear is no or no response, but you don't know until you ask.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming on the show. If you are in the field of data science and you are encouraged by these answers and want to be a part of what the Home Depot is doing, then certainly use your Google and find some job that fits for you. If you're out there building a data science team or capabilities, take some of these answers and help them shape the way that you build your team. And hopefully you can be as empowering to the employees that work there and to the vision that your leaders have. John, JW, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure to have you all on the show today.
Yeah, thanks, Evan.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Make sure to like and subscribe, and tune in next time on the Minding Your Own Business podcast.